let's just. So welcome to the Big Surf Experience. This is a demonstration. You can paint along if you wish. You might find it's quite complicated and fast painting because I've got a lot to get through, painting the breaking surf and the rocks and the composition. And I thought we'd start off with a little new trick. I sent you all a video, and this video, hopefully I can go onto here and share screen and put it on full screen, and it's only about 30 seconds. So this was film that I took at Bracklesham Bay, I think it was Bracklesham Bay, of a guy surfing. But what I want you to look at is the just the way the wave forms behind him. You see, you've got that really dark ridge of water coming up. I mean, this is into the light, which is before it's breaking. And then as we turn around, you get better lighting. You can see what's happening with the shape of the wave, as well as him surfing on it.
And flatten out.
And it flaps about. And in fact, there isn't very much on this. It's it was only a 30-second clip, but I think it just shows you that the wave comes in. It comes up quite dark, unless you're looking right through the wave and it's very big and you can see through the light. But usually you get this darker than the sea, comes up to the top, and then the surf comes over the top and down. And I just wanted to show you that very briefly. Let's just take that off. I don't want to invite, I'll just stop share. Because what I'm going to do now is, you see, when you look at the photographs, that was for focusing. The two photographs that I've got here have got a wave coming up and crashing down. But when you're trying to photograph a still, it's very difficult. This is one I took. This is one that's off the internet. And I look because they have the lovely rocks with the surf that's all draining off it. And then there is a wave here, which isn't quite full. And then there's a wave behind it, which is almost over crashed. So I'm going to use this as my composition, but I'll have to talk you through it because it's not going to be exactly like that. That's just really the starting point. So bearing in mind that movement and looking at these photos, I'm going to move on to the close-up so you can see my paint, see the canvas close up. Don't know if we need that on or not. No, we don't. Keep that off. Hopefully this colour is going to be fairly good. So I can start by talking you through the colours and going through. One thing we have got already is I bought some of this painting butter, which is painting medium number 5 from Lucas. And this is, I'm going to put some out on my palette and then show you my palette. This is the thick Alkyd texture medium. It's quite smelly, but it dries very quickly and really bulks up your paint without let's just put that on there. So what I've done here, that's my white paint. It's a little bit bright, that, isn't it? Does that look a bit bright? I think that might be a bit bright. Just let me reach over and just grab, turn the other light off for now. See what that looks like. Is that better colour?
Same. Same.
Any better or worse?
Same.
About the same, yes. Well, we might need the light later on. We'll see how it goes. But that's the butter here, which is the gel that I've just squirted, which is like a semi-clear gel, dries clear, and the white paint. So I can bulk the paint up and apply. When we come to apply it sort of for surf and that, or thick texture, and it will speed up the drying time massively. So that although it's oils, you can be painting quite thick paint and it will dry within 24, 36 hours. My yellow has slipped off here a bit, but I've got all of these colours, which we may use for this painting. I've got my buff titanium, which is sort of beige colour, and Naples yellow. Lemon yellow, which is obviously a bit thinner and has slid down into the azo yellow. I'll sort that out in a minute. So that's the azo. It's like a cadmium yellow deep, but that's a synthetic version of it. Then I've got my cadmium red and magenta. I've got my Sèvres blue, which is very similar to cerulean blue. People who make Sèvres blue, apart from my own brand, are Royal Talens. It's a Van Gogh oil colour. So as in the French porcelain. Then I've got ultramarine blue. So I've got a very warm blue, and I've got a lovely turquoise blue to make sea colours with. I have put on some of my sapphire green, which is like a pale version of Viridian. I don't know if we're going to use it, but it's on the palette. And then I've got some raw umber and some burnt, well, it's actually Venetian red, but like a burnt sienna alternative, and the white. We're not going to use the black. That was for a different lesson. So those are all the colours that are set out on the palette. So hopefully if you want to have a go at this later, you can at least look at you can say, oh yes, which colours did she have, and you can go through them. Then brushes, I've got some bigger brushes. Well, this canvas is 16 by 20 inches, primed with a sort of a cool grey, blue grey gesso, which I get by mixing. As you know, I take some white gesso and I put a little bit of ultramarine blue and a bit of burnt sienna acrylic and stir it all up and make a blue grey. And I've got a whole load of brushes here. Let's just get them sorted. Let's just put them up one by one. That's probably easier. That's my largest brush. This is a number 12 filbert. If I put my thumb next to it, you can see it's a good inch across there. It's quite a big brush. Could be lovely for doing some really big swirly sea. Something a little smaller. That's a number 8. Which is, sorry. So someone's going to ask me something. No. That's a number 8 filbert. And then I've got my lovely favourite number 4 long filbert for the more details. And I have got a round brush, which I'm probably just going to use to actually just draw in the composition. So it might be useful to show you a wider angle so you can see both the photos and the painting, because I'm just using, today I'm using I haven't got white spirit today. I've actually got a small pot of like an odorless white spirit. It's an odorless thinner, so it's not so smelly. So I'm just going to mix up, probably use, in fact, rather than the round brush, I think I'll just use the long filbert. Taking a lot of burnt sienna, no, a little bit of burnt sienna, a lot of spirit to just make a thin wash. Instead of drawing in pencil, which tends to show through oil. Now, looking at this, I love this big long rock and the fact it's got surf coming over. And what makes a painting of sort of rocks and surf rather than just a beach scene is by not having the beach. If you paint and bring the surf swirls and the rocks into the foreground, it sort of, I think it makes it a lot more dramatic. Now we've got other rocks here, but I quite like this composition. I quite like this fairly long rock, so I'm going to bring that shape in. Now, need to decide on the photograph, it's going probably 2/3 or certainly 2/5 of the way in, and there's not a lot of gap into the sea. If I make this rock a little bit shorter to down and bring it not quite to the center, we'll just have a see. I might decide to move it in a minute. I might change it. That will give a lot of more open space, won't it, for the waves? And there's a lot of sea here. The horizon is quite high, so we'll just go up here. I should have drawn the horizon with a straight line, but just whack it in. I don't know, be about there. Just put something in there. You would probably draw it all straight, but I can't do it because there is a rock here on the horizon. There's another little bit of rock there in the distance. And then we've got a series of waves. Now, this first one is going to come up and have foam. So that's going to be the dark backwash of it. And although it's crashed a bit, I think if we make it a little bit, make a really long wave coming in here. And what you can do is just bring a little bit out that way so that it's not perhaps wave all, it's not foam. So that's going to be dark backwash there. And then in front of it, there's another big wave here on the drawing. So we've got this one, which is sort of up here. In fact, there's almost rocks and more. It's quite a messy photograph, this, but I just thought it was quite fun. So we've got something here that's going to be a much darker ridge. You can see why I said it's a good idea, this one, I think, to just sit back and watch. Because to be honest, unless you've painted a lot of seas, you're going to find this quite difficult to follow and paint. So that's going to be another dark wave there, actually going to be sort of this bit here. And I don't know whether we want to have another I've got that quite foamy. There's looks almost like there's a rock there. Something's flowing up. But I quite like my big rock here, and then this wave, where it's all crashed already in the surf, that's all coming over, and this is all surf. We could almost have a little bit of a wave using this idea where it's coming onto the rock. So I could almost bring something in here. Unless you're down at the sea, and then when you're down at the sea actually painting, it's a nightmare because the sea doesn't stop, you know. It moves all the time. But here I've got this lovely, I like this. There's almost like there's like a backwash there. There's almost like a bit of foam in there, and then there's a shape. So there's a bit of foam there, and then there's quite a backwash edge curling down. So there's more foam here and more splashiness coming here and coming over the rock. So that's going to be, actually, that's going to be white in there, isn't it? So when you come to paint sea, it can be quite a challenge. And it can also be pretty fantastic. There's a couple of little tiny rocks down there. I think they may be fairly important. I'm just going to mark those in a little bit there. Might even bring them up a bit more. Foam, because what you've got here is you've got that's the dark rock, that's the area here, and I don't know if you can tell, there's a lot of white foam here and then quite a strong shadow. So we can have the foam coming along there from the previous wave. I think what I was going to do over the next month is do a much simplified video on painting beaches. But to get to do this is quite complicated, but it's quite nice to watch, I hope. So we've got a really rough sea. This is coming in. We've got this area here which is going to be darker with the little streaks of foam in it. Then I'm going to bring in this wave to here, crashing a little bit onto this rock. And we're going to have some sunlight coming in. Sunlight looks like it's coming over here. So it is going to catch the foam. And it's going to catch a little bit here, but then there's going to be quite a bit of shadow. There's going to be some shadow in there as well, I think. There's a fair bit to think about. But at that stage, that's as much drawing as I'm going to do. And then move in a bit. Is that in focus? That looks a little bit, that looks perhaps, I had checked the focus on this before. Does that look a bit blurry?
No, that's right. I think it's okay.
Okay, well, let's leave it like that. Sometimes you can mess it up. So I've now got to think about the colours for the sea. And thinking about it, it's quite a blue, quite a greeny colour. If you look at the actual photograph here, there's a lot of almost a dark sort of deep sort of sea bluey green and very strong. And then this is all quite blue here. Now, where I want this to be sort of shadow water, I'm going to probably put a bit more purple into that. And in here, we'll have more of these strong blues. I've got an ultramarine, which if I mix with a little bit of, we want to make it a bit phthalo, don't we, really? Okay, well, let's have a little go.
What are you mixing it with?
I'm just deciding at the moment. I'll just put this palette up on here. I've just got the ultramarine there. I'm thinking of taking a little bit of the azo yellow, which might look a bit black it does look a bit black. It goes slightly green. And then on the edge here, if I put some white into the edge of it, a little bit of green in there, we'll get a sort of slightly green colour, but I don't think it needs the white in it. The white's just making it go a bit sort of, I don't know, it might work. So at the moment, I think we're going to take for the darkest colour, I'm going to paint from dark to light here on these waves. I'm going to take a tiny little bit of azo yellow into the ultramarine. It is making it a bit green, because on this wave, I need that to be quite dark. And that is, can you see how that, this is the number, it's number 8 brush, this one. So what I'm going to do is immediately strike in there with the backwash of that wave, quite dark, and it'll be fairly dark up there as well. So I'm going to scrub that colour into there because that's deep sea. I think we're going to need a little bit more of this colour. So it's not beautiful. I haven't put very much white spirit in it. It's more or less thick paint, because there's another dark ridge going in there. It's almost a mountain shape to that one coming out to there. And then if my light's going to, I'm going to have my light coming down there. So my light's going to come on here. This area of the sea is going to be lighter. So we'll take the ultramarine and white and a little bit more of the, I think the azo yellow, I'm not sure, might go a different way. That's going a more greeny colour.
Is an azo yellow a mid yellow?
It's like a cadmium yellow deep. It's this one here. So it's quite a deep egg yellow.
Okay.
Rather than
okay.
Is that helping? What colours have you got on your palette?
Well, I've got a lemon yellow, a mid yellow, a yellow ochre.
Yeah.
Or a Naples yellow.
The nearest one you've got is the mid yellow.
Okay, I'm using that. Yeah.
But are you painting?
I am actually, yes.
All right, it's okay. I just sort of, because if you take as a bright, because that's not really bright enough there. I want it to be lighter still. I'm just going to switch the blue. If you use the mid yellow, that's probably your best bet, and you might want to put a tiny touch of red in it, cadmium red. But this colour here, I've just switched my blue. I'm still using the azo yellow, but I'm just going to use the well, you probably have cerulean blue.
Yes, I do.
Make it a bit more turquoise so that we've got some lighter colours in there. Okay. We need to have a look at this and see what's happening. And a little bit of lighter colour in there. I'm not thinking about the white, I'm just thinking about the light. Maybe a little bit of light down there. You should have said, oh, why didn't you put the rock in first? I just wanted to try and get this feeling of light. It's looking very dark, and it's very dark in the painting here. So I've got that sort of area of light, which we may even eventually put some Naples yellow in there. I don't know yet. I'm just trying to get the main shapes coming in here. Of this wave that's sort of welling up, and that's going to be darker. So I'm just going to go back with that. So I've got two colours here. I've got the azo yellow and ultramarine with white, or azo yellow and ultramarine on its own. And then I've got the azo yellow and cerulean blue and white, which is giving me this turquoise. So all the darks are ultramarine based and the lights are turquoise. These are cerulean based. But down here, I think it needs to stay bluer. Quite difficult. You almost could imagine you're painting mountains rather than sea at this stage. Yeah. Similar approach. Yeah, I think that will probably do. Now it's feeling desperate for these rocks and the back area of sea before I worry about the surf. I try to get the darks in first. What I would say is we do need a bit of dark in here, but probably not too dark, because that's my foreground wave. And on the photograph, it's a lot greener. So I'm just going to, I think for now, I'm just going to go in with my cerulean blue and azo yellow for that backwash. We can always put something darker in afterwards. Might even have a bit of, I don't know what's going to have in there. That's going to be nearer. That might even have a bit of Naples yellow. In fact, let's put a bit of Naples yellow. Let's just get some Naples yellow on the end of the brush and just streak it in there a bit to make it a bit lighter. Painting wet into wet. Who am I talking to? Who's painting?
No. I'm painting.
Who's I?
Jean.
Ah, Jean. It's all right, because I can't see you. See, I'm just sort of.
I know. No. Good.
No. I can't see you, and I can't see what you're doing. That's probably just as well.
Good.
Right. I'm going to switch my attention now to put in this big rock. So that, and that other rock, and then I'm going to try and put in some colour. So we'll then have all these colours on the canvas. Now I want this rock to be pretty dark, and the best way to get a good dark is to take your ultramarine blue and put some burnt sienna in it. And in fact, I know there's water streaking off here, but I'm not going to worry about the water streaking off. I'm just going to start with a pretty scrubbed on dark. We'll scrub some lights into it afterwards. Can you hear the scrub?
I can.
Because what that means is that the paint it's like neat out of the tube consistency, but by pushing it around, and it's going on quite thin. But it's going on quite thin because I have pressed the brush into the canvas. What I don't want the darks to be too dark, but if I just take a slightly lighter touch and load the brush only with ultramarine blue, I should then be able to just put a few little slightly darker bits in there on top. I haven't put any light into this yet. Don't know how much light it's going to have. There is, in the photograph, there is a little bit of light on the rock, but not very much. So I'm sort of trying to keep away from the Naples yellows and the whites at this early stage, and sort of letting it build with the darks, and thinking about the dark. Oh, while we've got that rock colour, we could add a tiny bit of Naples yellow to it, just to lighten it, because there's a couple of rocks on the horizon here. So I'm going to put those in. Those might be quite nice to have them. I think that one's a bit bigger than the other, but anyway, we'll just put those in there. So that's the same colour as this, but with a bit of Naples yellow in it, so that it's gone a bit lighter. So we've got to that stage. So it's all darks at the moment. It's all very dramatic. What's giving it its movement already is the way that I put the brush to the canvas. You know, when we started here, we started with a big swoop and swishing around in the way the foam is sort of moving and moving back. And I think when you're painting this kind of seascape, that's quite important. So anyone who's painting along, do you need a catch up for a minute, or are you okay?
No, you carry on.
Okay. Because what I want to do now,
I'll probably give up halfway and then I can do it later.
That's okay. What I want to do now is I want to mix a sort of shadow colour. Almost shadow. There's going to be a lot of surf going in here, and I'll just bring this up a bit so you can see the bottom of the canvas. Because that definitely looks blurry to me. I'm just going to pause for a second. So what I'm going to mix now is I'm going to mix a slightly bluey purple. I've mixed it on the bottom here. I don't know if you can see. It probably doesn't look that purple here. I've taken ultramarine blue and magenta to make a purple. And then instead of lightening it with white, I'm lightening it with a bit of Naples yellow, and probably bringing a bit more blue in as well to keep it towards the blue side. Because what I want is a sort of a greyed down colour, blue colour, to put into this bottom area here initially, because this is going to be in shade. It is going to be foam, and I haven't mixed enough, so I now have a bind pan it while I mix a whole load more paint. We'll just mix up a bit more. So we haven't, at this stage, I haven't put any gel or anything into them. We're just getting the paint on. But this area here is going to be shadow surf colour. So I'm going to put a shadow tone on it to start with, which is this greyed down. Because you see, if you put even Naples yellow, it is a yellow of sorts. And what it does is it neutralises, because it's complementary yellow to the purple, to the violet or whatever. It's a sort of blue violet, isn't it? So if you've got a bluey violet and you put some yellow in it, and if you put an earth yellow in it, like Naples yellow, it doesn't sort of go yellow in it. It just neutralises it gently down to a sort of soft, sort of grey shade. So that's going to be quite grey down there. And there's going to be a bit of grey in there, because that's going to be where the foam's going to go. And I don't know if there's anywhere else I need to stick the grey. At this stage, probably not. We'll just do that. But that's going to give me something to work on when I come to put the foam in. I might put a bit of purple in there when I've got it on the brush. We'll just whack a bit in there, possibly. Yeah, let's do that. I think with seascapes, you've got to sort of have on the one hand, you need a good understanding of the waves and how they move. But on the other hand, you need to be sort of quite free with your brushwork to just get on with it. So we've got quite a lot happening here now. I've got this mauve and this, I've got the colourways, and I haven't worked at the top. And if you notice, we didn't put the sky in. Didn't even start with the sky. So what I'm going to do now is bring in a colour for the behind the water, which is going to be based on ultramarine in the distance, and with a little bit of softening. Now, I don't know whether I don't really put any green in it, any yellow in it. I don't want to make it greeny. Just want to neutralise it slightly. So we'll take some more ultramarine blue, which I've just topped up. And I'm just going to try a little bit of, maybe a bit of buff titanium in it just to lighten it. Nope, that's not going to work. Take some ultramarine blue and put a little bit of the Naples yellow in it, which should soften it a bit more. Let's just see what colour that is. A little bit light. It's still a bit light. No, different way again. You see, this is what happens when you're doing the demos and you're not painted for ages. Put a tiny bit, that's better. Take the ultramarine blue, which has got a touch of light in it now from the Naples yellow. And I'm just adding a bit of burnt sienna into it, because burnt sienna is like the orange equivalent, the dark orange equivalent in the complementaries. And I'm just going to put in a fairly flat area of blue in there. That looks a bit bluer on screen than it does on the actual canvas, actually. So that's gonna, and as soon as I do that, and we haven't got any waves in there, that's what I call my Dulux painting. It's just putting some flat colour on to start with, to mark in an approximate horizon, which is very approximate. But can you see how it brings this down, and all of a sudden it's much easier to see this wave. We're going to have a big wave here, and then this is going to be the other wave, and this is going to be almost like a welling of surf of the water, where it's swirling rather than actually breaking. So that just establishes the shape of the sea, I hope. So this is quite quick, really, isn't it?
Very quick.
Too quick to paint along with, I think.
Rather, but keep going.
Well, the thing is, if I slow down,
no.
what you find happens is it becomes very, for me, I will paint really quickly for the first hour, and then I'll sit back and think, okay, where am I going with this? If I don't put that energy into it to start with and
yes, I understand.
paint quickly, it doesn't work. Now I've got the area of foam, I'm just going to take the residual, there's not very much left of this, of this mauve that we mixed, which was the ultramarine, magenta and Naples yellow, and just splot that in along the bottom of there. And you can see that is going to become the wave, isn't it? It's almost becoming the wave just by doing that. That's going to become the big wave that's coming in here. And then you can start to see the structure of the painting coming together in half an hour. I reckon if I make an hour's long video, we could do 2 seascapes. Now, what we haven't got on these photographs, on either of these photographs, if you come back to this one, you can see it's pretty boring. There's not much in the way of a sky. And there's no sky at all on the other photo. But what there is in the photo is quite strong feeling of light. And I would like my light to be sort of over here, so that this rock is in shadow, this foam is in shadow, but the light will catch on the edge there and a little bit on this wave, and it will catch on here and on the top of that rock slightly, and then a little bit in places. I want a nice patch of sunlight coming in on this water here. It's not there yet, we've just got it in a light blue. So I need a sky that's going to have that feeling of light coming over from that side. Also, there's a lot of blue in this painting. There's a lot of blue so far, and if I'm just at this stage, I'm just going to clean my palette, scrape all that colour off. If I scrape all the residual colour off the palette, you can see Not very much, is there? Look at that. There's only a tiny bit. So I'm just going to get rid of that, wipe it off, clean the palette down a bit, because I'm going to move on to before I do go into the waves for the second time and start to create a proper seascape, I'm going to need to get the canvas covered, the whole lot, which means I'm going to need to have this, the sky painted in. I'm just wiping that off briefly and clean the brush up, and then it's a question of possibly using a bigger brush, because you think, oh, this is, I mean, that's quite a medium-sized brush. It's still fairly dirty, so it's got quite a bit of paint on it. But I think I want the sky. I'm going to go up a brush. So I'm going to go to this one, because I want the sky to be a little bit more exciting, sort of like sort of soft backlit clouds with the light coming through here. So I don't want the sky to be very blue, in part because if you look at a sky and you come down towards the horizon,
yeah, it's not blue.
Not where it's blue.
Yeah.
You know, the color, the bright blue sky that you see, you only really see it the middle to the top of the sky.
Yeah.
And on this painting, so I'm just cleaning up slowly. It's like I'm talking about it. On this painting, we haven't got a lot of sky. I mean, I've got a bit more here. The actual photograph, the sky ends about there. Well, I've got a bit more than that, but not a lot. Just move that up a bit. So I want a sky that's fairly, I'll put some spirit in there. There we are. I want a sky that's a little bit softer, not too much blue, and probably a lighter sort of. So I think rather than paint the sky, actually I am going to clean the brush, because I'm going to need this brush is going to be a bit big for the clouds, I think. Go back to the number. Just clean that one off a bit. Now I've got some clean spirit to clean it in.
Can I just make a comment also about not the colour of the sky, but the colour of the sea? The sea there is very Mediterranean and beautifully blue. Actually, a Bracklesham Bay sea is actually quite greeny and grey.
Yeah, well, this wasn't meant to be a Bracklesham Bay sea.
Okay, all right, okay.
Bracklesham Bay video was just to show you the movement of a wave.
Okay, all right. So, but a British sea actually is quite greeny.
It's quite green. Well, this is quite, I mean, this probably doesn't look as greeny on the photo as it does.
Yeah.
It can be quite green. Yes, I agree. I mean, we've got to, this isn't blue. This is quite a dark green, although it's not looking very dark green on here at the moment. So yeah, I think you're right. We could go a little bit greener as it develops. This looks very blue. I mean, this looks quite grey on my, but it looks very blue on the photo, which is annoying. So yes, I think you're right. I think we'll need to sort of bring it down a notch at the moment. At the moment, I've just gone in with the really strong colours.
Yeah.
And they'll need toning down. But if you go in with the soft colours, with oils, it's very difficult to bring up the darks and the strength afterwards. Because when you paint into a dark or you paint into a strong colour, you're invariably lightening it or neutralising it. So I tend to paint probably over strong to start with and then tone it down.
Yeah.
Whereas I think if you come from a watercolour background, you would tend to paint softer and then gradually strengthen up the darks and the colours.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
That would be the complete opposite of the way I'm working here, which is tricky to get your head around, I think.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. I think we just need to sort of go with, yeah. I mean, the colours can be quite sort of turquoise, can't they? Or they can be quite green. But I've got a big seascape I might show you later on that I've been working on that's sort of in that genre. I just want to get a slightly brownish sort of cloud colour, sort of not anything too strong. This is looking a bit green on here. Just try lighting even, try different lighting. Nope, that's just going to blast it out. Can't win sometimes with these cameras. I think it's just different times of the day. Yeah. It's weird. It's actually it is better to do these demonstrations in the evening when you can fix the photographic lights and you don't have influence. Now that is quite a greeny. This is now looking a bit too blue, but we'll tone it down afterwards. That is actually quite a neutralised grey. I've got raw umber and cerulean blue and some white and quite a bit of raw umber. We may eventually put some Naples yellow in it, because what I want to get is a sort of quite a brownish colour to these cloud shapes which are building up here. I'm just taking the colour and putting in some patches. You can't see this very well, can you? Let's just get this, bring this closer in. Just bring the camera up a bit. Come on, camera. And then shut that across. Just don't keep paintbrush in your mouth. Bring that across there. That's probably better for the cut. Is that better for your colour?
Yes, I think it's
Quite a sort of, it's quite a greeny grey, that colour of the sky, with the clouds coming across from there. Let's bring this around a bit. And then behind it, I will put a much paler, very pale blue of the sky, which is, I'm going to use pretty much cerulean blue or Sèvres blue and white in the top over there. My hand is coming in the way a little bit. It's a question of getting a colour that looks right on the camera as opposed to a colour that looks right on the painting. The two are not the same. That's going to go too dark. This is here. This is my, oh, see how the brush has got a bit dirt in it. Because I hadn't cleaned the brush properly. There was a bit of cloud colour still in the brush. I'm just starting with my cerulean blue and white. And I think I might dip the end of the brush into ultramarine just to give it slightly bluer, to push that colour in for the blue part of the sky. And the light's coming this way. So I want, because the light's coming across this, I just want to make sure you've got enough you can actually see what I'm doing. The light's coming across this way, that there'll be more blue on this half of the blue bit of sky. The colour does not look very realistic, and I'm not quite sure why not, but it just isn't. And then I'm going to take a little bit of titanium buff rather than Naples yellow, which is stronger, to try and bring in some lighter colour on this. Let's just angle it slightly. Turn that over a bit. Just sort of get a very, very pale sort of turquoisey blue colour coming behind that cloud at the top. So there's a little bit of buff titanium, and then coming down, I'm going to use this buff titanium only because it's gentler, it's much softer than the Naples yellow, into the bottom of the sky where it's very pale. Coming in there. That's coming down to where the sea's going to go. We need a bit more paint. Just bring that in along the horizon there. Scrub it into there. And then just scrub it up into the blue. But try not to wreck the clouds I've already done. I'm bringing that across. Bring it up to the blue, a little bit of the blue coming in there. I'm telling you what I'm doing. I don't know how much it's showing up on the colours, because the colours are so soft. Sometimes it's difficult to see. I think it is difficult to see what's happening here. And then behind the cloud, I am going to take a bit of Naples yellow and white to just bring in some thicker. No, that's it's too yellow. It needs to be the buff titanium and white to bring in around here some thicker paint. So it's more impasto, sort of quite a lump of paint on the brush to fit in around the clouds, as though the light might be coming from behind the clouds.
yeah.
And in fact, there may even be a little bit of an edge on the cloud there. Not that much. I've done it a bit too much. Let's just smudge it out a bit. I'm going to have to go back into my cloud colour in a minute to restate it, because I've actually blasted out a bit too much cloud. I've painted it out a bit too much. So I want to come back into here with the cloud colour, which is the brown, which is basically the cerulean blue and raw umber and a bit of white, and just soften that off a bit. Push the paint around. I mean, not worrying about pushing the brush against itself or making extra little marks or flicking it about, just to try and create a feeling of cloudiness that's very broken and blended in a bit. I have to say, I paint my clouds very instinctively, so I know we've had loads of lessons on trying to paint skies, and all I would say is painting skies is what I do, and teaching people how to do it, I'm sort of giving up the ghost to a degree. Because it's my unique way of doing it.
Yeah.
And it just, you know, it's not something that's easily teachable. And there has to be something that's unique about it. But you see, sort of by keeping all that and not worrying too much about the edge quality, I'm just pushing the paint around. And in some places, it's just finding a sharp edge, and in other places, it's just sort of mushing together. And the end result should be, especially if I just bring this camera back slightly, I think you'll find that it will come back into better focus. Looks like it's gone a little bit blurry. It has gone blurry, hasn't it? Pause while we do a quick adjustment. So with the sky sort of established, what makes the light shine more here is some of this paint is thicker, and some of this paint over here is much thinner and rubbed in and blended away. And it's that sort of different texture of colour, different texture of paint rather, that gives you the feeling of light coming behind the clouds, even without putting it on with a knife or anything. It just gives it a bit of variety of brushstroke. I mean, I've gone on and on in some of my classes about brushstrokes, and it's all about brushstrokes really, and how you apply the paint. So having put in the sky, I'm going to now start on a sort of what I would say would be a second painting, in so much as I want to bring some texture into this to turn it into water and rocks, and then work my way systematically down the painting the way proper artists do it, you know, to bring in sea, surf, the surf lines, this big front wave, and then work out what's happening down here, because there's actually surf and there's a roller coming in here, which you don't know about yet because I haven't put it in yet. So that brush is a bit big. I probably need to switch back to my number 4 filbert, which is that little one, and into this sea here, in order to get this feeling of it being water rather than it being flat brush strokes. I think if you look on here, I don't know if you can see it in here, it's sort of like you've got almost dish shapes of the shadow where the water is dipping down and it's becoming sort of wavelets. Is wavelets a word?
Yeah.
What I want to do here is to take another colour, and I think out here we can go a little bit lighter. That was mainly ultramarine, and I think we could go with ultramarine and Naples yellow for this, so it will be a bit greener. So let's go ultramarine and Naples yellow, and then come into here and add in. Start to add in. She says, wanting to zoom it back in again in a minute. Start to add in some little sort of marks to break up the surface of the flat paint, so that it becomes a little bit more like it might have movement in it. Taking this sort of slightly lighter, but not massively light. It's only lightened with a bit of Naples yellow to start to just bring a little bit of shape into there. It's not really doing it enough. That's a little bit lighter. And it's also putting a little bit of a slightly greener colour on top of the blue. This blue's fairly light anyway. I'm going to flick that up and down. I'm trying to keep my hand out the way of the camera at the same time. That's the big skill you have to learn when you're doing your zooming, is get your bloody hand and head out the way of the camera.
Yeah.
That is not easy. Because I'm painting and the camera is right on my chest at the moment. Now what I want to do is take a little bit of the pure buff titanium, I think, rather than white, and just sort of put a few little flecks. Oh, not that brush is getting a bit broken up. Just put a few little extra flecks in there around where the rocks are, just to bring that where it might have a bit of water breaking up on it. But that's not white, that's titanium buff. If anybody wants any titanium buff, as long as they're still selling it, the Art Discount shop online, artdiscount.co.uk, I think it is, we're doing a deal on Daler. I mean, just basic Daler Rowney paints. I mean, quite basic, nothing special. But they were doing 3 tubes of the same colour, and I bought the white and I bought the buff titanium for £7, and they were 75 or 70 mil tubes. I'll show you because this is what I bought. That's Georgian. So it's only basic wool, but if you're just using white or what's, I mean, that's a zinc white. I couldn't get titanium, they'd run out. But I got 3 of those tubes for £7.
Very good.
I thought it was quite cheap. I'm just going to put a little bit of Naples yellow and burnt sienna into this rock, and then down the bottom put a little bit of burnt sienna and a touch of ultramarine. I don't want it too dark, but I do want it a bit dark, because if you think it might be a bit too dark, you can always blend it. You can blend your oil just by pressure of your hand. Just put a bit of dark into there, that will just give it a, you see how that's, I mean, I'll just bring that, rather than move the camera, I'll just bring the painting a bit nearer. So I don't know how to focus it there. You see what I've been doing in that section?
Yes.
Make the rock, and there needs a bit more there, it needs to be a bit dark down there, just to sort of give the rock a little bit more shape and texture to it. It's got a bit pointy, it might be a bit longer. You can stretch down. And this is, as I said, this is not white, this is buff titanium. The top is Naples yellow and Venetian and burnt sienna, and the bottom, the darks, is burnt sienna with a little bit of ultramarine blue in it. And it gives the whole thing a bit more life. So I think we've probably got enough going on there. I'm going to leave that now. Yeah, we are. Right. So now I want to move on to my first wave. Now, what's important, I'm just going to remix a little bit of things. Remember, we had azo yellow and ultramarine blue for the very strong dark. Just going to remix that a bit. A little bit of dark, because what's going to be important is that we've got a fair amount of dark there underneath the wave, because otherwise it won't curl. We haven't got the light shining through it per se, although I'll need to get it a bit lighter at the top. But that dark will mean that this foam will come forward. It won't be too flat against the water. And then I want to take a bit of a strong yellow. I'm just wondering which yellow we're going to need. I don't really know yet. I'll think about it. In the top here, probably not that yellow. It's the azo yellow. I don't know whether that's going to work. I think I might need the white and lemon yellow. This is a bit of an experiment, because it's going a little bit away from what's on the actual painting, on the photographs rather. I just want to bring that in a little bit lighter at the top there, but not all of it. It needs to be darker down the bottom because it's deeper. So the colour, and even a dark colour, which will get lighter because it's not as soon as you put a colour, body colour where you've got some white in the mix, so the colour then becomes body colour because the white gives it body, but it also lightens it, and you also lose that really strong, that's just capturing the light a little bit. If I turn it that way, you might see it better. No, you'll probably see it worse. If I turn it that way, you'll see it better. Just a lot. So that's going to come in and blend into there a little bit. I blended it in a bit too much. Me too. Damn.
You fell asleep.
Sorry? Are you feeling all right?
Yeah, I fell asleep.
Who's falling asleep?
You're falling asleep.
Pay attention.
Pay attention, wake up, don't fall asleep. I'm not falling asleep.
I'm not falling asleep.
You have a good job, so
Taking a little wiggle of my burnt. This is working quite well. This. If you haven't got buff titanium, you could put a tiny little bit of burnt of raw umber into your white, and it would make a relatively similar look. Although that looks white, it's not. but I do want white because we want the light to be shining on the top of this wave. Now it's a question of, do I use some texture with the gel, which I had planned to use, and now I don't know whether I need to. I'm not sure. I'm going to take some pure white and a tiny bit of cadmium yellow, cadmium lemon. I'll probably need to be showing you this on the palette. Where are we mixing it? I'm mixing it. Oh, I'm mixing it up here. I've got quite a lot of mainly white paint, but I've tinted it with the cadmium, with the lemon yellow, and then I'm going to mix in a nice blob of my texture paste, of my painting butter, so that it really bulks it up. I don't know if you can see that. So that's really getting quite. Oh, look at that! That's lovely. So I've got that to use, because what I want some light on this top of this foam. Now, I don't know whether it's going to be a bit heavy-handed to put it on with a knife, and I think it might be actually. Yes, I think that's going to be a bit heavy-handed to go on with a knife. I don't want it that thick. I just wanted to bulk the paint up a bit. So what we need to do now is take my brush and just start to put a little bit of that in and see if I can get some very strong lights coming into this sunlit bit of the wave. I don't know. Do you know what? I'm not sure I like doing this. I don't know if it's going to work. That's going to come down, and this is going to be quite light against the. It seems a little bit. I may have put a bit too much yellow in it. I don't know. Well, I don't know. Let's just go for it. I think I'm just putting a little bit too much texture in it. I'm just getting a bit textured out because I fancied using it. That's why. It's always fatal, isn't it? We get an idea.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to put quite a lot of foam in there because this wave has pretty much broken on this thing. It's quite foamy. I'm going to put that into there and then go back with my grey, which I haven't remixed, and we need to remix a bit more of the ultramarine, magenta, Naples yellow for the purple for the underneath bit of the wave. That's better. Get a bit of that. And that's just on the brush, and sort of so I can blend the two into each other a bit better. Because what makes the white of the wave look really white is actually the dark bit of the shadow of the foam. That's really important. Now it's beginning to bubble quite nicely. We're getting quite a good sort of wavy look. And it is this wave is really quite, it's sort of rushing in, and it's quite big. There's not so much of a. Yeah, there is a lot of action coming into this wave, isn't there? Yes, I think so. Yeah, I'm quite pleased with that. While I've got that bit of white on my brush, if you can, with a delicate pressure, I just want to create a feeling that there's a bit of foam going up there and coming in there. But you've got to be very careful when you do this and just sort of put it in slightly, but not too much. Because the paint underneath is very wet, and if you do too much, it just sort of all gets all muddy and horrible. But can you see how much is going on in this wave now? There's a lot of, there isn't any pure white, because even this, what you think is pure white, is actually slightly tinted with, this is the buff titanium here, and this is the white with a tiny, tiny bit of cadmium lemon and texture, and then underneath it is a variety of mauves, which is made up from the ultramarine, magenta, and Naples yellow, lights and darks. So I think that's looking quite dramatic now, isn't it?
Lovely, yes.
Well, good movement on it. Probably need a bit more action in the sea up there, but I want to keep moving down first. I would look at the clock, but I've taken the dash out of my watch. It's 3 o'clock. So we've been working for about an hour, which isn't very long on a 16 by 20 canvas. You can see why I'm painting 1 metre by ½ a metre, can't you?
Yeah.
So, I tell you what, that takes a lot of energy. But I'm quite pleased with all this so far. I think that's beginning to come in. What we need to do now is you need to think about what's happening with the swirl of foam. And in fact, this will need to have more purple in, because I want the light to come this way. So this, although this is welling up, that would be darker on that side, and it'll be lighter on this side. I think it might be easier to get this first, to just get the top of this wave in first. And that's looking at the other photograph. So I think I'm going to do that next. Then this area, then the rock, then the foreground. I think, yes. So whilst I've got my lovely surf colour to hand, I'm just going to come along here with my buff titanium first and just give this a little bit of a feeling of water coming over the top. Just coming that way. Just over there. We need to get some more swirls coming in. That's going to be more, not as much pure white coming in there. That's going to be coming in. That's the buff titanium. You see the brush strokes coming in that way. And if you just pick up a bit of turquoise, and for turquoise I need Naples yellow and touch of cerulean blue, we'll just whack a bit of turquoise in there so that becomes the water coming down that way. I need to bring this up one, otherwise you won't be able to see it. I need to bring this up 2. That's better. So that's coming over that way into there. That's not as thick. And then the edge of this splash is where I'll take my lovely thick, same colour here, my white with a touch of gel and a touch of yellow in it. So that area there is going to have to be quite bright, where the water's just splashing up a bit onto there and a little bit round the back, but not too much. It might just be catching a tiny bit at the top there of the wave. I would say I've spent a lot of wasted time sort of standing at the beach looking at the water.
No, that's never wasted.
I'm just watching it. And in fact, yeah, it's quite exciting if you go down to the coast, and especially if you go down to Cornwall or somewhere where you
Cornwall's wonderful, yeah.
The really big waves. Mind you, if you can get accommodation in Cornwall this year, you will be doing very well.
Yes.
I don't think there's any accommodation left in Cornwall in the entire county. I think it's all
That's
booked.
amazing. Yeah.
Everyone's fully booked.
I think it's lovely though for the locals. It's great.
Well, to be honest, you know, everyone's moaning about, oh, I can't go to Spain or whatever. I'm thinking, people who need the money, darling, the people in this country with the small businesses.
Yeah.
You know, we're all struggling. And although it's been great to have, like, for instance, all the art that's been on television and all the Grace's Art Club and the Sky Portrait Artist of the Week, it's been marvellous, but it's all been free. And I would love to teach everyone for free, but I can't afford to.
Mm.
You know, it sort of becomes an element where you think, well, hang on a minute, I've got to survive this. Although I have to say that what's been really interesting is that the need a bit more purple. And now you see how this bottom of this wave is just needs to have a little bit more shape to it there. And a little bit of an edge on there, I think. Yeah, I think so. Just a bit down there, just straighten that in. That's better. And now you can see it's moving. And in fact, what I've had to do is I've just had to darken the surf with ultramarine and burnt sienna, which is almost giving me a blue-black. If I just put a little bit of extra dark into that centre of that surf, maybe a touch of magenta, it actually gives it more strength.
Yeah.
It's important that is quite dark. This is what people get wrong with surf. They just think, oh, it's surf. I'll get the white paint out. When they use pure white paint, they go all over, and it just looks a bit lost. I haven't thought about what's happening within the surf. See, within there might be another little bit of white there. That's quite, you see that little splosh, that's quite important. And that wave is much more believable. And it's not believable there, much more believable there. Now I've got to a stage where I need to go downstairs and get some more kitchen roll, because I've got some on order, blue roll, but it's not coming till Wednesday. And I've now used up what I've got left. So I shall pause this for a minute. So we'll come back onto the recording. Got my coffee. Thank you very much for a short break. Now, looking at this picture, what I'm thinking is we've got this lovely area of light. I'm going to have to put a little bit more dark purple in here into the foam and into this space where it's going to be in shadow. And then I can carry on bringing the lights in there on the foam. I'm going to concentrate now on the foam and the foam swirls, which, again, you need to have your brush. You need to be holding your brush a long way back. So don't have your hand tight down here. Try and hold it further back. so that you can paint from at least the elbow or even the shoulder when you're doing a swooshy movement. So I'm going to concentrate initially on the mauve, on the shadow colour, which will be shadow foam, and then I'm going to move down into this rock. But I want to get all the shadow areas established first, really, before I start to. It's most of these things you tend to paint the sort of the duller, darker, because with oils you're always working from dark to light rather than the other way round, because it's quite difficult to establish a strong dark over a light patch purely because the paint is wet, and if you put a dark color onto a wet light color, you're going to end up with a mid-tone, you know. So you've got to be a little bit more aware of what's happening. I've got quite a dark shade. I'm just going to add a little bit darker colour into here, where this is going to be shadow foam, and into the bottom of there it's going to be foam. But that's quite a strong ultramarine magenta Naples yellow mix. I'm just coming off the bottom of the canvas. I need to either move this up again. At the top of the easel now. Oh, they are. It's okay. Just by putting that in with a little bit more blue coming in here, and the movement coming around. And in fact, the brush is a little bit small for this, but I'm going with it anyway. So this is going to be quite This is going to be quite dark, and it looks a bit odd, but it won't look odd once I start to put the light into it. And the colour of the light will depend on whether we've got
So what do you?
Sorry, you're going to ask me something.
Could you just go through what colours we're using? The blue and
This mauve.
Yes, this mauvey bit at the bottom.
This mauvey bit for the bottom, I'm using ultramarine blue,
Yeah,
magenta, and
magenta. And Naples yellow.
Naples yellow.
Okay. Oh, that's a bit greeny.
Hang on, for the purple,
Yeah.
shouldn't be green. If it's green, you've got too much blue and not enough red in the mix.
Okay. All right.
So if you go back to start with the blue, add the red, and then flavour it with the Naples yellow. You should end up with these purple colours here.
Okay. Yeah, got that.
Some will be a bit pinkier, and some will be a bit more towards blue.
Yeah.
If you've overloaded it, the yellow you're acting as a complementary to dull down the mauve.
Yeah.
And then to the point where you put so much yellow in that the yellow actually starts to affect the colour beyond neutralising it and turns it green. Or if you haven't put much blue in and you put mainly magenta in, it turns it salmon pink.
Right.
Which starts to show you how many colours you can mix with only 5 or 6 colours on your palette.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So if you're painting along with that, I will just slow down very slightly.
That's all right, keep going.
And what I've mixed now is I've mixed this turquoise green colour.
I know, yeah.
Now this colour is cerulean blue.
Yeah.
And I just put a little bit of Naples yellow in it. But if you put a lot of Naples yellow in it, there you can see I've got. I'll just show you on here. You can see there. We probably can't. Oh, that's better. That's more blue, and that's more yellow.
Yeah, yeah.
So again, what I would say is when you're starting to paint, I'm just going to go up there with a bit more yellow. Bring that a bit brighter into the top of that wave, a little bit, because that's going to be catching a bit of light probably. And that's not. I'm going to have to go back with some purple behind it. Yeah, just go back and just wash my brush and put a bit of dark mauve in there. That's better. Just bring that in there. Yeah, I think so. And then I'll go in with some dark blues in there in a minute. That means it's got a bit too much purple on that side at the moment. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to establish basically areas of foam and sea that are going to be in shadow. And then we'll go with areas that are going to be in I'm just going to add a little bit of extra green in there. That's the cerulean blue with the Naples in, but mainly cerulean blue, just going in there to just break it up a little bit. Right. Okay. So having got to that stage, I think we'll just bring the purple, so it's all putting the purple in. I'm looking at this area here now, which looks a little bit black and not really talking to all the rest of it. And if you remember, when we first started, I used ultramarine blue and azo yellow to mix that colour. But I think it's going to need a little bit of white in it. And I almost think it might need to be ultramarine blue and lemon yellow. I'm not 100% sure. I'm just going to mix both options for a minute and just see where we go. That might be too... It's interesting. That's actually better. You wouldn't have thought. Do you know, I'm painting a lot more with cadmium red and lemon yellow than I ever used to do throughout all of my lifetime. I never seem to use much lemon or cadmium red, and I'm using it all the time now. It's strange how you change. I think that's going to be more of a green. It's going to be a better green. And I've got lemon. Just let me work with this and see where it goes, because that's going to green the sea down a bit more. But this is meant to be the dark side. We want it to be dark. On there. And down there. We'll see what's happening in a minute, hopefully. Hopefully it'll make sense in a minute. I'm not sure it is at the moment. I seem to have got a patch of light that's shining on that wave as well. So the sun's on the wrong side of the picture at the moment. But I've used lemon yellow and ultramarine blue and a little bit, possibly a bit of white in it to make a sort of more of a sea type green. Because I think the first colour we went with, the azo yellow and ultramarine, was a little bit too dark. And this is a bit more of a sea green colour. So I'm just going over some of these darks and softening them a little bit. I'm still trying to think about this wave coming up. I've not quite got the shape of it yet. It needs to be a bit darker on that ridge. I think we're sort of getting to a stage whereby I need to start thinking about the foam lines. And I need to think about the patch of sunlight on that water in the distance as well. The patch of sunlight, I'm using cerulean blue and quite a lot of Naples yellow to get a really bright sort of yellowy turquoise. I'm just going to flick it in there, into there, like that. And maybe a little bit more in there. Don't know, just going to go for that, see what happens. Might regret it. That's quite possible. A little bit more yellow in there. Getting a bit confused. Right. Okay. Let's just have a think. Now, I've got two colours of surf. I've got the slightly duller purple probably mixed into buff titanium. And I've got a sort of a white surf, which I'm going to use my white with a tiny bit of cadmium lemon in it. So I think we're going to go with the white surf first. So I'm going to take the white with the cadmium lemon and think about these surf lines that are going to come into here. Now, I've got a great big lump of paint on here. Big lump of paint on here. I'm looking at the painting and I'm thinking, oh my God, what have I done? But up here, I just want to rest this down there. Down there. I'm picking up a lot of paint, so I've got a piece of paper in your hand to wipe the excess paint off and put a few little flecks in. So on that side, there's quite a bit of light coming in. It almost looks too bright. Let's just mush it back a bit. That's sort of where the foam is on the top of that wave there. And down that side. And there's quite a bit coming down that side, I think. There's some little patterns coming in here. I'm looking at this. Trouble is, I'm now working with the photograph. It's completely different to what I'm painting. I'm just sort of.
Doesn't matter.
There is something of an element of making it up as you go along.
Yeah.
I know there's going to be a bit of light there, but then I want to mix a colour that's buff titanium and a little bit of mauve. So I want a bit of the purple that we had before, which was the magenta, ultramarine, and Naples yellow. And then, well, because that's a bit dark, I'm putting a little bit of titanium buff into it to give myself a sort of shadow surf colour down here, where there is surf, but it isn't white, but it isn't blue. It's sort of surf shadow colour, which is just a bit awkward, really. Maybe a little bit in there as well. I think I might have gone a bit mad on this. It feels like it's a bit strong. This. I don't know. Get some more paper. If in doubt, get some paper and wipe it off. I think I may have gone a little bit forceful, a little bit too strong in there, but the more I work it, the more I'm going to ruin it. So I'm going to leave it, and I'm going to come down to this bottom bit, which I just need to just bring the camera in a bit and down there, and probably refocus it a little bit. I don't know. That's probably okay. Because what we've got here on the photograph, down there, is you've basically just got a whole area of you can almost tell there's a wave that's crashed. That one's gone over and then it's come forward and it's created just a bubbling surf that's bubbling up onto, I mean, I don't know how far out to see it. The beach could be quite a long way off. So I don't want to be quite like that, but I want the idea that I've got a second wave, but there's still a residual wave that's coming along here. And I think what we've got here is we've got this sort of this idea of this sort of bit of foam coming up there, but it's sort of it's more titanium buff than it ever was. And then here I've got a big area of foam coming in here, but it's shadow foam, and I probably need a bit of gel in. You know, I need a bit of gel into this, I think, to give it a bit more body. Just squirt out a fresh blob of the gel mixed with the buff titanium rather than the white, because I mixed all my gel into the white. I'm just mixing a little bit of just bulking up the buff with a bit of gel. A little bit more. Lovely painting with a palette knife with this as well, but I'm going to do that today. We'll do that later. Put too much gel in, of course it will go clear, and then you'll lose the actual pigment. But what I want is a feeling of a bit of foam coming up here that is not light, it's in shadow. In fact, that's working quite well there, I think. Just go with it. You see how it's becoming like a dramatic, just chuck it on rather than worry too much about it. At the same time, we could take the same colour, maybe slightly lighter. I'm mixing the buff into my white surf colour, because what we've got here is, as this water is catching, it's running down over the rock. We've got some lovely bits of trails of, not as white, there's more buff titanium in it, but there's little bits of water coming off there. And here you've just got to go for it. You've just got to be brave enough to flick that and leave it. And don't sort of have it too much of there's a little bit of rivulet coming down there. The more you work it, the worse it gets. It's not what you want to hear, but it is true. The more you sort of go for it, the more you can. I probably almost put too much in there already. You just get that feeling of a little bit of water coming off down there. But it just brings that to life.
Yeah.
And take a little bit of the white and think, well, is there anywhere where it might be lighter? Well, it might be a bit lighter on that top of that rock. There might be a bit of something coming through there, possibly. That might have a pull. And then there could be a little bit of white in the middle of this dark foam at the very bottom. You can see I'm just adding a little bit of, no, I can't add it. It's so wet and there's so much paint on it, won't stick. But I think I'm quite pleased with that, and I'm going to leave that. And then I would say that actually what I need to do now is come out a bit, because I want to get these rocks. I know this, we put this on very flat, just with the ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. and a little bit more blue in there. So I would quite like to go with the burnt sienna and maybe a little bit of Naples yellow and a bit of gel perhaps, to just bring in, no, I think it needs maybe a touch of blue. I don't want it to be too a bit browner than that. Just to sort of put some shapes into this rock. I've added a little bit of, so it's Naples yellow, burnt sienna and a tiny bit of ultramarine just on the top here to maybe give those rocks a bit of shape, and then maybe slash a bit of Naples yellow and blend it so that it sort of makes it look like that rock's catching a bit of light. But that's probably enough. When you come to paint rocks or cliffs or sea, less is more sometimes, you know, a little bit. You need a strong contrast between the light and the darks, but you do sometimes just need to flick it once and leave it, and try to teach people to paint less and to not flick, to not think, oh, it's got to be perfect or whatever. Or I'll just tittle this, I'll just tidy this up a bit. What happens then is they just kill it. Yeah, you see, I'm fiddling now and I don't need to be. It's crazy. What I need to do now is just come back to the areas of the painting where there's perhaps quite big gaps. I mean, there's quite a big gap, let's face it, behind here. This is not quite right. And in fact, I've got some of that residual dark. Oh, that's nice. I think that's actually the ultramarine and the azo yellow. It is. Quite a lot of ultramarine, a touch of white in it, whatever blue colour I had from there. That just needs coming back in there a little bit. Bring the edge of my wave and then take a tiny bit of the light colour, which is pretty dirty now because I've had my brush in and out of it quite a lot. Just put a bit of that on the edge there to bring that wave coming over a bit, but not too much. I'm fiddling it. And I'm getting to a stage now where I think that picture is ready to dry. It may not be completely finished, but I think there's so much paint on it and it's so wet. Every time I touch my brush, I'm just lifting paint back off again. So at this stage, I would say that just drop that down an inch and bring it back slightly so hopefully you can see the whole picture. The whole picture is quite big, isn't it? More or less. You've more or less got the whole painting. On the bottom, you don't. If you're going to miss anything, we'll miss the very top of the sky. There's nothing much happening up there. But you can see how much movement there is. Now, it's still, I would say, it's probably a little bit harsh on the colours. I'm painting almost in the pitch dark here in order to get this camera to work properly. So, you know, it's not, normally I would paint in daylight and I turn the easel the other way around in my studio because usually I'm facing with, I've got the window behind me, I've got the north light coming in. But I think that really covers, I mean, we've still got a bit of time left. It's not taken as long as I thought. But I'm not going to fiddle and just ruin something. I think you need to, because this is the whole problem. You can over fiddle. What this sea is, it's much more bright day in Cornwall or possibly even West Coast of America style of colours. It's very vibrant, but because it's vibrant, I've been able to show you the contrasts in the water. I mean, if we come, I don't know if this will go out of focus. It shouldn't do. If we come in right in close to there, look at all that brushwork.
Yeah.
Look at all that paint. This is why I daren't put any more colour on it, because it's actually now getting really heavy. And the thick paint here and the slightly thinner paint that's been pushed in, one colour's been pushed into another. Now, if you're doing that with a very subtle, soft, grey, greeny colour, it won't show up as much. This is a little bit overstated, I agree. But it's to show you, I mean, when you look down here and you see what's been happening, you can see that you've got really thick texture and thinner, and then a big dash of light on top. But it will read as the surf and the rocks. And in here, you can see none of it is very neat. It's all just been flicked on. I mean, I can only show you a way of painting sea as the way that I do it. You know, everybody's very different, and there are lots of techniques for painting the sea. But hopefully, that's at least giving you some sort of idea as to how you go about painting big break and mounds of and surf and rocks. And there's a lovely, I mean, there are lots of, you know, good, mainly American books on painting seascapes, because they've got the West Coast and Big Sur and other places that are just stunning to go to. And I would love to go and spend a month or 6 weeks out there painting the sea. Yeah. Certainly won't be this year, because you'll need your passport and the Americans probably still won't let you in. So I shall pause that for a moment. Look at that, just put that on the recording, because that is very different in the colours. The actual colours are somewhere between the two cameras. In fact, looking at this now, I would say that this area here is still probably not quite dark enough for the phone, but I quite like it and I'm not going to alter it. Anyway, I'll just have a look around my studio and we'll take a look at a couple of other paintings. I'm just going to pause this while I put one or two other pictures on the easel. Back onto recording. So this is a much bigger painting that I've done. And if I bring it really close in, there, you can start to see that the sea itself is all, this has all been done with a palette knife. And it's, there is still, you can just about make out the wave shapes, but they're much, much smaller. And yes, it still gives quite a dramatic effect. I mean, this painting here is, it's 3 foot by 2 foot.
Wow, that's big.
So that's about as big as I generally am working at the moment. And it's, you can see the colours are a little bit softer in there. They're not quite as strong on the camera. It's just a question of the camera. Whereas if you go for something smaller, this is something you may have seen, I don't know. This is another of my, I've been painting a lot at West Wittering and places. So the sea is much, you know, flatter. You don't get the big waves, but you do get the big skies and you do get some fantastic light. I mean, that I'm really pleased with that sky. This is a very different sky. This one, I can probably put it on the other camera because it's much smaller. This is the same size as I've just been painting for you. So that one is, it's all about that cloudburst. You know, it's all about the, and what makes this is much thicker paint here and here than the actual color of the cloud. So the light beams through. This is very thick paint here against the softer, less, you know, thinner paint. And if you look down onto the shadow right on the beach, if we bring that close up, you can see there's a lot of texture in it. And it doesn't look like very much, but when you step back, it is the sunlit, the morning sun that's come through after it's rain. It's called after morning light after rain, because that's what it was. It was the morning, and it had rained, and then you've got this lovely light coming in on the water. But it's you know, this is telling you something different. Yes, I can paint the sea and I can teach you techniques for painting things, but when I'm doing my own paintings, this is much more about depth, distance, mood, atmosphere, cloud, what I would almost call a nothing painting and an everything painting.
Self-expression.
It's, yes. I've got to, I'm going to be exhibiting at Denbies in June with a group.
Oh, are you? Oh, good. That's where I first met you.
Is it?
Yeah.
Anyway, I shan't knock that anymore. I should just close this off for now. But yeah, I'm going to be at yeah, you can see the cameras in the way. Yes, I'm going to be at Denbies 14th of June for a week with a group from Guildford Art Society. So I think there's 10 or 12 of us, because I'm not organising it, but I shall have lots of my seascapes and hopefully some. I've been down to Blackheath near Wannosh and Cranley. I'm actually doing a commission for somebody of the heath and the big sky, but I think there might be 2 or 3 other Blackheath paintings coming along as well. So, because it's obviously quite a popular place for people. So yeah. Has anyone got questions they want recording, or shall I stop the recording and you can ask me afterwards?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to pause.